Leader Schumer, Leader McConnell, Vice President
My
Pence,
distinguished guests and my fellow Americans.
my distinguished guests, my fellow Americans.
This is America's Day.
This is America's Day.
This is democracy's day.
This is democracy's day.
A day of history and hope.
A day of history and hope.
Of renewal and resolve.
Of renewal and resolve.
Through a crucible for the ages.
Through a crucible for the ages.
America has been tested anew.
America has been tested anew.
And America has risen to the challenge.
And America has risen to the challenge.
Today we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate,
Today, we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate,
but of a cause, the cause of democracy.
but of a cause, the cause of democracy.
The people, the will of the people has been heard.
The people, the will of the people has been heard,
And the will of the people has been heeded.
and the will of the people has been heeded.
We've learned again that democracy is precious.
We've learned again that democracy is precious.
Democracy is fragile.
Democracy is fragile.
And at this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed.
And at this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed.
So now on this hallowed ground where just a few days ago,
So now, on this hallowed ground where just a few days ago,
violence sought to shake this capital's very foundation.
violence sought to shake the Capitol's very foundation.
We come together as one nation under God, indivisible.
We come together as one nation, under God, indivisible,
To carry out the peaceful transfer of power as we have for more than 2 centuries.
to carry out the peaceful transfer of power
As we
As
look
we
ahead
have
in
for
our
more than
uniquely
2
American
centuries.
way.
as we look ahead in our uniquely American way.
Restless, bold, optimistic.
Restless, bold, optimistic,
And set our sights on the nation we know we can be and we must be.
and set our sights on the nation we know we can be and we must be.
I thank my predecessors of both parties for their presence here today.
I thank my predecessors of both parties for their presence here today.
I thank them from the bottom of my heart.
I thank them from the bottom of my heart.
And I know
And I know
the resilience of our Constitution.
And I know the
And the
resilience
strength of our
Constitution.
nation.
And the strength of our nation.
As does President Carter, who I spoke to last night but who cannot be with us today.
As does President Carter, who I spoke with last night, who
but
cannot
whom
be
we
with us
salute for
today,
his lifetime of service.
but whom we salute for his lifetime in service.
I have just taken the sacred oath.
I've just taken the sacred
Each
oath.
of those patriots have taken
Each of those patriots have taken
an oath first sworn by George Washington.
the oath first sworn by George Washington.
But the American story depends not on any one of us, not on some of us.
But the American story depends not on any one of us,
but on all of
not
us,
on
on we
some
the
of us,
people who seek a more perfect union.
but on all of us, on we the people.
This is a great
seek a
nation
more
and we are a
perfect
good
union.
people.
This is a great nation. We're good people.
Over the centuries, through storm and strife, in peace and in war, we've come so far.
And over the centuries, through storm and strife, in peace and in
But
war,
we still have far to
we've
go.
come so far. But we still have far to go.
We will press forward with speed and urgency.
We'll press forward with speed and urgency.
For we have much to do in this winter of peril and significant possibility.
For we have much to do in this winter of peril.
Much
and
to repair,
significant
much to restore,
possibilities.
much to heal.
Much to repair, much to restore, much to heal.
Much to build and much to gain.
Much to build and much to gain.
Few people in our nation's history have been more challenges.
Few people in our nation's history have been more challenged
Or found the time of more challenging or difficult.
or found a time more challenging or difficult
Than the time we're in now.
than the time we're in now.
Once in a century virus silently stalks the country.
Once in a century virus that silently stalks the country.
It's taken as many lives in 1 year as America lost in all of World War II.
It's taken as many lives in 1 year as America lost.
Millions
in
of jobs
all
have been lost.
Of World War II. Millions of jobs have been lost.
Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed.
Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed.
A cry for racial justice some 400 years in the making moves us.
A cry for racial justice some 400 years in the making moves
The dream
us.
of justice for all will be deferred no longer.
The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer.
A cry for survival comes from the planet itself.
A cry for survival comes from the planet itself.
A cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear.
A cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear.
And now a rise in political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism.
Now, a rise of political extremism, white supremacy,
That we must confront and
domestic
we will
terrorism,
defeat.
that we must confront and we will defeat.
To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul and to secure the future of America.
To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul and
Requires
secure
so
the
much
future
more
of
than
America.
words.
Requires so much more than words.
It requires that most elusive of all things in a democracy.
It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy.
Unity, unity.
Unity. Unity.
In another January on New Year's Day 1863.
In another January, on New Year's Day in 1863,
Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation.
Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation.
When he put pen to paper, the president said, and I quote,
When he put pen to paper, the president said, and I quote,
"If my name ever goes down into history, it will be for this act."
If my name ever goes down into history, it'll be for this act.
And my whole soul is in it.
And my whole soul is in it.
My whole soul is in it.
My whole soul is in it.
Today on this January day, my whole soul is in this.
Today, on this January day, my whole soul is in this.
Bringing America together, uniting our people and uniting our nation.
Bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our
I ask
nation.
every American to join me in this cause.
I ask every American to join me in this cause.
Uniting to fight the foes we face.
Uniting to fight the foes we face.
Anger, resentment, hatred.
Anger, resentment, and hatred.
Extremism, lawlessness, violence.
Extremism, lawlessness, violence.
Disease, joblessness, hopelessness.
Disease, joblessness, and hopelessness.
With unity we can do great things, important things.
With unity, we can do great things, important things.
We can right wrongs.
We can right wrongs.
We can put people to work in good jobs.
We can put people to work in good jobs.
We can teach our children in safe schools.
We can teach our children in safe schools.
We can overcome this deadly virus.
We can overcome the deadly virus.
We can reward work, rebuild the middle class.
We can reward work and rebuild the middle class.
And make health care secure for all.
And make health care secure for all.
We can deliver racial justice.
We can deliver racial justice, and
We can make America once again.
we can make America once again
The leading force for good in the world.
the leading force for good in the world.
I know speaking of unity can sound to some like a foolish fantasy these days.
I know speaking of unity can sound to some like a foolish
I know
fantasy
the forces
these days.
that divide us are deep and they are real.
I know the forces that divide us are deep and they are real.
But I also know they are not new.
But I also know they are not new.
Our history has been a constant struggle.
Our history has been a constant struggle.
Between the American ideal that we are all created equal.
Between the American ideal that we're all are created equal.
And the harsh, ugly reality.
And the harsh, ugly reality.
That racism, nativism, fear and demonization.
That racism, nativism, fear, demonization
have long torn us apart.
Have long torn us apart.
The battle is perennial.
The battle is perennial. And
victory is never assured.
Victory is never assured.
Through the Civil War, the Great Depression, World War, 9/11.
Through Civil War, the Great Depression, World War, 9/11.
Through struggle, sacrifice, and setbacks, our better angels have always prevailed.
Through struggle, sacrifice, and setbacks, our better angels have always prevailed.
In each of these moments, enough of us, enough of us.
In each of these moments, enough of us
have come together to carry all of us forward.
Have come together to carry all of us forward.
And we can do that now.
And we can do that now.
History, faith, and reason show the way of unity.
History, faith, and reason show the way.
We can see each other not as adversaries but as neighbors.
We can see each other not as adversaries but as neighbors.
We can treat each other with dignity and respect.
We can treat each other with dignity and respect.
We can join forces, stop the shouting, and lower the temperature.
We can join forces, stop the shouting, and lower the temperature.
For without unity there is no peace, only bitterness and fury.
For without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness
no
and
progress,
fury.
only exhausting outrage.
No progress, only exhausting outrage.
No nation, only a state of chaos.
No nation, only a state of chaos.
This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge.
This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge.
And unity is the path forward.
And unity is the path forward.
And we must meet this moment as the United States of America.
And we must meet this moment as the United States of America.
If we do that, I guarantee you we will not fail.
If we do that, I guarantee you we will not fail.
We have never ever failed in America when we have acted together.
We have never ever failed in America.
And so today, at this time and in this place, let us start afresh.
And so today, at this time, in this place,
all of us, let's begin
afresh.
to listen to one another again.
All of us, let's begin to listen to one another again.
Hear one another, see one another, show respect to one another.
Hear one another, see one another, show respect
Politics
to one
don't
another.
have to be raging fire destroying everything in its path.
Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire.
Every disagreement
everything in
doesn't
its
have to
path.
be a cause for total war.
Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war.
And we must reject a culture in which facts themselves are manipulated.
And we must reject the culture in which
And
facts
even
themselves are manipulated and even manufactured.
My fellow Americans, we have to be different than this.
My fellow Americans, we have to be different than this.
America has to be better than this.
America has to be better than this.
And I believe America is so much better than this. Just look around.
And I believe America is so much better than this. Just look around.
Here we stand in the shadow of a Capitol dome.
Here we stand in the shadow of the Capitol dome.
As I mentioned earlier, that was completed amid the Civil War.
As was mentioned earlier, completed amid the Civil War.
When the Union itself was literally hanging in the balance.
When the Union itself was literally hanging in the balance.
Yet we endured and we prevailed.
Yet we endured. We prevailed.
Here we stand looking out to the Great Mall.
Here we stand, looking out on the Great Mall,
where Dr. King spoke of his dream.
Where Dr. King spoke of his dream.
Here we stand where 108 years ago at another inaugural.
Here we stand where 108 years ago at another inaugural.
Thousands of protesters tried to block brave women.
Thousands of protesters tried to block brave women
marching for the right to vote.
Marching for the right to vote.
Today we mark the swearing-in of the first woman in American history elected to national office.
And today we mark the swearing-in of the first woman in
Vice
American
President
history
Kamala
elected
Harris.
to national office. Vice President Kamala Harris.
Don't tell me things can't change.
Don't tell me things can't change.
Here we stand across the Potomac from Arlington Cemetery.
Here we stand across the Potomac from Arlington Cemetery,
where heroes who gave the last full measure of devotion rest in eternal peace.
Where heroes who gave the last full measure of devotion.
And here
rest
we
in
stand
eternal
just
peace.
days after a riotous mob.
And here we stand, just days after a riotous mob
thought they could use violence to silence the will of the people.
Thought they could use violence to silence the will of the people.
To stop the work of our democracy and to drive us from this sacred ground.
To stop the work of our democracy. To drive us from this sacred ground.
It did not happen. It will never happen.
It did not happen. It will never happen.
Not today, not tomorrow, not ever, not ever.
Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Not ever.
To all those who supported our campaign.
To all those who supported our campaign.
I am humbled by the faith you have placed in us.
I'm humbled by the faith you've placed in us.
To all those who did not support us, let me say this.
To all those who did not support us, let me
hear me out as we move forward. Take a measure of me in my heart.
say this. Hear me out as we move forward.
And if you
Take
still
a measure of
disagree,
me
so
and
be
my
it.
heart. If you still disagree, so be it.
That's democracy, that's America, the right to dissent peaceably.
That's democracy. That's America. The right to
Within the
dissent
guardrails
peaceably.
of our republic is perhaps our nation's greatest strength.
Within the guardrails of our republic is perhaps this nation's greatest strength.
Yet hear me clearly, disagreement must not lead to disunion.
Yet hear me clearly. Disagreement must not lead to disunion.
And I pledge this to you, I will be a president for all Americans, all Americans.
And I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all
And I
Americans.
promise you I will fight as
All
hard for those who
Americans.
did not support me as for those who did.
And I promise you I will fight as hard for those who did not support me
Many centuries
as for
ago,
those
St.
who
Augustine,
did. Many centuries ago, St. Augustine,
a saint of my church, wrote that a people was a multitude.
saint of my church, wrote that a people was a multitude
Defined by the common objects of their love. What are the common objects we as Americans love?
defined by the common objects of their love.
That
What are
define
the
us as
common
Americans.
objects we as Americans that define us as Americans?
I think we know.
I think we know.
Opportunity, security, liberty, dignity.
Opportunity, security, liberty, dignity,
Respect, honor, and yes, the truth.
respect, honor, and yes, the truth.
Recent weeks and months have taught us a painful lesson.
Recent weeks and months have
There
taught
is
us a
truth
painful
and there are
lesson.
lies.
There is truth and there are lies.
Lies told for power and for profit, and each of us has a duty and responsibility.
Lies told for power and for profit.
As citizens, as
each of
Americans,
us
and
has a duty
especially as
and a-
leaders.
As citizens, as Americans, and especially as leaders.
Leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation.
Leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation.
To defend the truth and to defeat the lies.
To defend the truth and defeat the lies.
Look, I understand that many of my fellow Americans
Look, I
view
understand
the future with some fear
that
and
many of my
trepidation.
fellow view the future with fear and trepidation.
I understand they worry about their jobs.
I understand they worry about their jobs.
I understand, like my dad that lay in bed staring at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering,
I understand, like my dad, they lay in bed staring at night, staring at the ceiling,
can I keep
wondering,
my health care? Can I pay my mortgage?
can I keep my health care? Can I pay my mortgage?
Thinking about the families, but what comes next, I promise you.
Thinking about their families, about what comes next.
I get it.
I promise you, I get it.
But the answer is not to turn inward, to retreat into competing factions.
But the answer is not to turn inward, to retreat into competing factions,
Distrusting those who don't look like you, work like you.
distrusting those who don't look like you,
Worship the way you do, or don't get their news from the same sources you do.
worship the way you do, or don't get their news from the same sources you do.
We must end this uncivil war.
We must end this uncivil war
that pits red against blue, rural versus urban.
that pits red against blue, rural versus urban,
Conservative
rural
versus liberal.
urban. Conservative versus liberal.
We can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts.
We can do this if we open our souls
If
instead
we
of
show a
hardening
little
our hearts.
tolerance and humility.
If we show a little tolerance and humility, and
If we're willing to stand in the other person's shoes, as my mom would say.
if we're willing to stand in the other person's shoes, as my mom would
Just
say,
for a moment, stand in their shoes.
just for a moment, stand in their shoes.
Because here is the thing about life.
Because here's the thing about life.
There is no accounting for what fate will deal you.
There's no accounting for what fate will deal you.
There are some days when we need a hand.
Some days, when you need a hand.
There are other days when we're called on to lend a hand.
There are other days when we're called to lend a hand.
That is how it has to be. It's what we do for one another.
That's how it has to be. This is what we do for one another.
And if we are this way, our country will be stronger.
And if we are this way, our country will be stronger,
More prosperous, more ready for the future.
more prosperous, more ready for the future.
And we can still disagree.
And we can still disagree.
My fellow Americans, in the work ahead of us, we are going to need each other.
My fellow Americans, in the work ahead of us, we're going to need
We will
each
need
other.
all our strength to persevere through this dark winter.
We need all our strength to persevere through this dark
We are
winter.
entering what may be the toughest and deadliest period of the virus.
We're entering what may be the toughest and deadliest period of the virus.
We must set aside the politics and finally face this pandemic as one nation.
We must set aside politics and finally face this pandemic as
One nation.
nation. One nation.
I promise you this, as the Bible says, weeping may endure for a night.
And I promise you this, as the Bible says,
joy
weeping
cometh in
may
the
endure
morning.
for a night, but joy cometh in the morning.
We will get through this together.
We will get through this together.
Folks, all my colleagues I served with in the House and the Senate up here.
Look, folks, all my colleagues I serve
We
with
all
in the House
understand.
and the Senate up here. We all understand.
The world is watching all of us today.
The world is watching all of us today.
So here is my message to those beyond our borders.
So here's my message to those beyond our borders.
America has been tested and we have come out stronger for it.
America has been tested, and we've come out stronger for it.
We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again.
We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again.
Not to meet yesterday's challenges but today's and tomorrow's challenges.
Not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's
We
challenges.
will lead not merely by the example of our power,
And will lead not merely by the
but by the
example
power
of
of our example.
but by the power of our example.
We will be a strong and trusted partner for peace, progress, and security.
We'll be a strong and trusted partner for peace,
Look, we
progress,
all
and
know we've
security.
been through so much in this nation.
Look, you all know we've been through so much in this nation.
And in my first act as president, I would like to ask you to join me in a moment of silent prayer.
And in my first act as president, I'd like to ask you to join me
To remember all those we
in a
lost this
moment of
past
silent
year to
prayer.
the pandemic.
Remember all of those who we lost in this past year to the pandemic.
To those 400,000 fellow Americans.
Those 400,000 fellow Americans.
Moms and dads, husbands and wives, sons and daughters, friends, neighbors and coworkers.
Moms, dads, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, friends, neighbors,
We
and
will
coworkers.
honor them by becoming the people and nation.
We'll honor them by becoming the people and the nation.
We know we can and should be, so I ask you.
We know we can and should be. So I ask you,
Let us say a silent prayer for those who lost their lives, for those they left behind, and for our country.
let's say a silent prayer for those who've lost their lives
Amen.
and those left behind, and for our. Amen.
Folks, this is a time of testing.
Folks, this is a time of testing.
We face an attack on democracy and on truth.
We face an attack on our democracy and on truth.
A raging virus, growing inequity.
A raging virus, growing inequity,
The sting of systemic racism.
the sting of systemic racism,
A climate in crisis.
a climate in crisis,
America's role in the world.
America's role in the world.
Any one of these would be enough to challenge us in profound ways.
Any one of these would be enough to challenge us in profound ways.
But the fact is, we face them all at once.
But the fact is, we face them all at once.
Presenting this nation with one of the gravest of responsibilities we've had.
Presenting this nation with one of the gravest responsibilities
Now we're
we've
going
had.
to be tested. We are going to be stepped up, all of us.
Now we're going to be tested. Are we going to step up? All of
It is a time for boldness, for there is so much to do.
us? It's time for boldness. For there's so
And
much
this
to
is
do.
certain, I promise you.
And this is certain. I promise you.
We will be judged, you and I.
We will be judged, you and I,
By how we resolve these cascading crises of our era.
by how we resolve these cascading crises of our era.
Will we rise to the occasion is the question.
Will rise to the occasion is the question.
Will we master this rare and difficult hour?
Will we master this rare and difficult hour?
Will we meet our obligations and pass along a new and better world for our children?
Will we meet our obligations and pass along a new and better world to our children?
I believe we must. I'm sure you do as well. I believe we will.
I believe we must. I'm sure you do as well. I believe we will.
And when we do, we will write the next great chapter in the history of the United States of America, the American story.
And when we do, we'll write the next great chapter.
It's a story
in the
that might
history of the
sound
United
something
States of
like a
America.
song
The
that means a lot to me.
A story that might sound something like a song that means a lot to me.
It's called American Anthem.
It's called American Anthem.
There is one verse that stands out, at least for me.
There's one verse that stands out, at least for me.
And it goes like this.
And it goes like this.
The work and prayers of centuries have brought us to this day.
The work and prayers of century have brought us to this day.
What shall be our legacy?
What shall be our legacy?
What will our children say?
What will our children say?
Let me know in my heart when my days are through.
Let me know in my heart when my days are through.
America, America, I gave my best to you.
America, America, I gave my best to you.
Let us add our own work and prayers.
Let's us add our own work and prayers
to the unfolding story of our great nation.
To the unfolding story of our great nation.
If we do this, then when our days are through.
If we do this, then when our days are through,
our children and our children's children will say of us.
Our children and our children's children will say of us.
They gave their best.
They gave their best.
They did their duty.
They did their duty.
They healed a broken land.
They healed a broken land.
My fellow Americans, I close today where I began with a sacred oath.
My fellow Americans, I close today where I began with a sacred oath.
Before God and all of you, I give you my word.
Before God and all of you, I give you my word.
I will always level with you.
I will always level with you.
I will defend the Constitution.
I will defend the Constitution.
I will defend our democracy. I will defend America.
I'll defend our democracy. I'll defend America.
I will give all of you, keep everything you that I do in your service.
And will give all of you, keep everything
Thinking not of power
I do
but of possibilities.
Thinking not of power but of possibilities.
Not of personal interest but of the public good.
Not of personal interest but the public good.
And together we shall write an American story of hope, not fear.
And together we shall write an American story of hope,
of unity, not division,
fear.
of light, not darkness.
Of unity, not division, of light, not darkness.
The story of decency and dignity, of love and of healing, of greatness and of goodness.
A story of decency and dignity, love and healing.
May this be the story
Greatness
that
and
guides us.
goodness. May this be the story that guides us.
The story that inspires us.
The story that inspires
The story that tells ages yet to come that we answered the call of history.
us. And the story that tells ages yet to come
We met the moment.
that we answered the call. We met the moment
That democracy and hope, truth and justice did not die on our watch but thrived.
democracy and hope, truth and justice did not die in our
That our
watch but
America
thrived.
secured liberty at home and stood once again as a beacon to the world.
That America secured liberty at home and stood once again as a beacon
That is
to the
what
world.
we owe our forebears, one another and generations to follow.
That is what we owe our forebears, one another and generation to follow.
So with purpose and resolve we turn to those tasks of our time.
So, with purpose and resolve, we turn to
Sustained
those
by
tasks
faith, driven by
of our
conviction.
time. Sustained by faith, driven by conviction,
And devoted to one another and to this country we love with all our hearts.
and devoted to one another and the country we love with all our hearts.
May God bless America and may God protect our troops.
May God bless America and may God protect our troops.
Thank you, America.
Thank you, America.